guest today for all you Virginians. Myself, a resident of the great Commonwealth. My guest is the Development Director of NORML, as well as the Executive Director for NORML's Virginia chapter. Jenn Michelle Pedini, welcome to VoteProPot-Cast, and thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
With regard to your position as the Executive Director of the Virginia chapter of NORML, you must be really good at your job because a lot's been happening in Virginia. What have we had, 16, 17 bills in front of the governor this session?
Yeah, there were 18 bills in total that touched on marijuana policy succeeded in this General Assembly.
And that's incredible.
I work really hard. I have a lot of wonderful volunteers that help get this work, and our successes are due entirely to the support we have been able to build with our members and in the legislature here in Virginia.
Well, those of us at VoteProPot-Cast and all of our listeners, thank you. And me specifically, because I am the only out of the three hosts who is a resident of the Commonwealth. So have been sitting patiently as my two other co-hosts are in Maryland and enjoying the medical program. So let's start, if it's okay with you, at the very beginning. Talk about yourself a little bit. How did you get into cannabis reform, and specifically, how did you come about working for NORML?
Well, that's a great question. I have had cancer twice, and that was here in Virginia. Was about 10 years ago. And certainly the sort of idea of medical cannabis was out there. It wasn't something that the Commonwealth had, and it wasn't something that we have sort of the bulk of information that we do now. And it wasn't part of my cancer treatment here in Virginia. As I was recovering from a stem cell transplant that I needed to survive the second round of cancer, I went to Colorado and I saw some physicians there that were treating their patients with medical cannabis and had some rather eye-opening conversations. And I went to the NORML Aspen legal seminar in 2012, the same year, and met the founder of NORML, Keith Stroup, who is also a resident of the Commonwealth.
He is.
And we were talking about what I had just been through, and he's like, wow, you should really go back and get involved in changing public policy in Virginia. And so I just sort of blindly set about connecting with Virginia NORML back then. And I really, after learning what I learned when I was out in Colorado, I really wanted to make sure that if I had to face cancer a third time, that my healthcare providers had, every possible tool available to them, and that I would have the same options that millions of Americans have around the country. And unfortunately, we've been successful in that. And Virginia does have a regulated medical cannabis program now.
Thank goodness. Thanks to you. Well, that's so you have a personal experience as a patient. That leads a lot of people down the path to, kind of pushing for reform. I guess the most prominent, the ones we hear about the most, are the bill that decriminalizes possession and, like you just spoke about, the legalization of the true medical cannabis program. My understanding as a Virginian is that we've had CBD and THCA oil programs. So now we're going to have true medical cannabis, THC, and if I read it correctly, up to 10 milligrams per dose, which is significant. So is that true? And how do you see that moving forward? When do you see that happening?
That has been true actually for some time now. But the wording that is in our code that will change on July 1 has been very misleading and difficult for people to understand. So last year,
present company included,
last year with Senator Donovan, we were able to put in place some preliminary language that sort of set the stage for what the final products could contain. And that language really did conflict with the pre-existing language of CBD and THCA oil, which really did not accurately define the product. So this year we did one big sweep and just cleaned it all up, combined the definitions, left in place the end regulations on the actual single dose itself, and those are based that 10 milligram THC threshold is taken directly from adult use.
Sure.
Edible limitations.
Which is perfectly reasonable.
Right. And it doesn't really translate into an inhalation product where you're not going to hit that dose limitation on an inhalation.
Of course. Right.
So that's where we're at. Come July 1, our products will be simply defined as cannabis oil in Virginia. Each dose, which under Virginia pharmacy code means single dispensed unit, so one tablet, one puff, one lozenge, one gelatin cube, whatever it might be, must contain at least 5 milligrams of CBD or at least 5 milligrams of THCA, because you do want there to be some basis to the product. You don't want them to just sell you a sugar cube.
Yeah.
And then it may contain up to 10 milligrams of THC. And there is no restriction on a patient's dosage, which would be the total number of doses that they take at one time. Let's use Advil, for example. A dose would be 200 milligram tablet, but your dosage would be, 2 to 3 tablets or 4 to 6 tablets. So.
Whatever your doctor or your pharmacist has recommended, I guess, for your particular case. Here it will be the pharmacist that assists the patient with determining dosage. Yeah, and regarding that, it's the Virginia Board of Pharmacy that's kind of overseeing the medical program, and it has to date, right?
Correct.
Does that put a limitation in your mind in the future for flour or edibles? Does that present a problem with us seeing flour available at some point in the future?
Well, it did this year.
Yeah, I know.
It remains to be seen how this program grows. What, if any, portion of it will remain under the jurisdiction of Board of Pharmacy, and what may possibly transition to a cannabis-specific regulatory agency in the future. But the intent for next year is, in fact, to pass legislation that will allow the pharmaceutical processors, as they're bizarrely called here, to dispense flour.
That's terrific. Yeah, that is really great. Regarding that, my understanding is, and it's very confusing. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not even that bright a guy. So I've been reading all this stuff, trying to understand it. But what I take away is that they've basically, the legislation allows for 5 licenses to date. So that's 5 processors, all of which are large, vertically integrated companies. Is that correct?
That's correct. There have been 5 permits issued, and they are vertically integrated. So everything happens at one location under one license, from seed to sale, cultivation, extraction, processing, product formulation, dispensation, and even delivery.
Right.
Now, we also did pass legislation this year that will allow these existing licensees to have 5 additional cannabis dispensing facilities per health service area that they are currently licensed in. So let's use Dharma, for example. Dharma is out in Bristol.
Right.
Dharma will be able to have 5 additional dispensaries in addition to their one large vertical, and they are able to partner with new business partners on those dispensing facilities if they choose.
Is there anything in that legislation, and this is a fear of mine, the fear is that everybody that gets a license is huge and rich. So is there anything either in this legislation or anything coming that you see coming in new, maybe even unwritten legislation for the next session to help small businesses or inner cities or people of color who have been most impacted, by the prohibition in the war on drugs? Is there anything down the road you see, or is it just going to be the rich guys?
there are certainly, so let's kind of unpack that. There are the 5 processors, and some of them are outright multi-state operators like Columbia Care and MedMen.
Mm-hmm.
These are big companies, and they got licenses in Virginia. This is not unique. It happens around the country
it
when
does. Absolutely.
There's a rollout of a new program. However, a number of the other 3 are made up largely of Virginia companies, Virginia investors,
mm-hmm.
Virginians, small business owners themselves, who partnered with an out-of-state operator to provide that cultivation and extraction expertise. Now, will there be more opportunities in the future? Yes. The most immediate opportunity would be to partner with one of these existing licensees as they begin to build out their 5 additional dispensing facilities. Now, next year, there will certainly be additional legislation to do another round of licensing for the medical program. Hopefully, we will see a more tiered licensing structure there.
Mm-hmm.
That really remains to be determined. But once we start looking at adult use and what the model is for that, I can tell you that the model we are exploring for adult use in Virginia is certainly with a tiered licensing structure where retail and cultivation and even some type of production, be it extraction or additional products, would be licensed separately. And you can really see that first step towards a more tiered approach to cannabis in the Commonwealth with this, with SB 976 this year, where it allows the 5 retails to be licensed. That's an immediate step towards tiered.
That's not uncommon. I mean, that's how we've seen it unfold mm-hmm. in other states. So this, you got to start somewhere. And let's face it, you want it to be up and running, and it's hard to get up and running, I imagine, with a bunch of little guys. So you kind of need some people with some cash to get it started. But as long as down the road you have in mind to help out those folks. So talk then about the issue of folks who are incarcerated currently for minor possession, or folks who have records who are not incarcerated currently. Anything in the works for that?
Sure. So the decriminalization bills, SB 2 and HB 972, included provision for what is called records sealing, and that will automatically apply July 1 to any records associated with misdemeanor marijuana possession. Those records will be sealed and really visible only in limited circumstances. Generally, if someone...
So it's not expungement, but
it's record sealing. Mm-hmm. And so unless you're applying to work for a law enforcement agency, your record is for the most part sealed. So we have record sealing in these bills because expungement was punted to study this year. It was sent to study because there wasn't sufficient accounting for it in the budget. It's an expensive process to undertake. The legislature did not appropriately account for that when they proposed budget items. And so the solution this year from the legislature was to do a study and come back with that line item in the budget for expungement next year. So we went ahead and said we'll do record sealing.
That's fair. That's fair.
Knowing that expungement is coming.
Hey, that's
great. That's how it will work. Kind of a misnomer that people are sitting in jail or in prison right now in Virginia for misdemeanor possession. It's certainly not. It certainly happens that people sit in jail for misdemeanor possession, but our prisons in Virginia aren't packed with people for misdemeanor possession. So what happens to those people? If there is someone in prison for misdemeanor possession in Virginia, we'd probably like to hear from them. But
I think what the way it's going is the best, is terrific, because the biggest problem is folks going to try to get a job, and they've got a record for getting pulled over with an ounce of weed 5 years ago. So that's really what the sealing does. So that's terrific. When can I go to a dispensary and get my medicine with THC in it?
Yeah, so Dharma in Bristol, the one I mentioned earlier, is expecting to have product available July of this year. They are currently cultivating right now. As soon as they have their plants harvested, their extraction done, their products have to be formulated, and then they have to be approved by Board of Pharmacy. And so once Board of Pharmacy approves those products for sale, then you're going to see Dharma open their doors to patients.
What about the other dispensaries around the state or the Commonwealth? Will, by the end of the year, will they be up and running, do you think, in all the jurisdictions?
Yes, I would certainly expect that by the end of the year, you will see more facilities open their doors. We haven't gotten any firm responses on dates or cultivation updates from the other processors, but as they provide them, we'll be sure to share those. Excellent.
Yeah, I've been looking for that. That's kind of important to me, understandably. Well, that's good. That's great. Good to hear. What's involved with getting your card or getting your prescription or actually being in a position to go get your oils or your tinctures or your lozenges or whatever it is? How does one go about getting approval?
The process in Virginia is largely similar to that in other medical cannabis states. A patient must first receive a recommendation from a registered practitioner. You can find the list of those practitioners on the Department of Health Professions website. Of course, Virginia NORML makes this very easy to access through our website.
Yeah, very easy. It really is. Go to NORML, folks, and they have a spreadsheet there with approved.
Yeah, we take that information from the Department of Health Professions registry and put it into a spreadsheet so that it's just a little more accessible for our visitors who are maybe want to sort by city where they live as opposed to alphabetically by last name, which is the only way the DHP registry sorts by.
And that's the default is
Correct.
Sorted by your town or your jurisdiction, your city. And that's great. That's great. So I'm in Ashburn. I went to Ashburn. There's 3 people in Ashburn. So then I would go to them, make an appointment, explain my situation, and if approved, then what? I go to a different website?
Once a patient receives their written certification from the practitioner, then the patient must register with the state. So this is done through the same portal on the Department of Health Professions that healthcare practitioners in the state are using for their licensure. Patients are using that same portal for their licensure as well. The license is technically issued by the Board of Pharmacy, which is underneath the Department of Health Professions. So the patient goes online. We have a step-by-step guide on our website for what the process is going to look like and what a patient should click or enter at each page that they encounter. So it's very helpful to do this on a computer. Don't try to register on your phone. It's not going to be a pleasant experience. But
no.
Yeah, have the guide open on one page and have the portal open on another, and go through the steps. You enter your information, and you pay your $50 to Board of Pharmacy, and then you either email or fax or mail them a copy of your certificate, and Board will mail you back your card. It's a paper card. It doesn't have your picture or anything like that. And it comes with those, the blue security print on the back, and you sort of tear the edges off, and there it is.
If you're listening and you're in Virginia and you're interested in the medical program and you're not already signed up, if you just start at NORML, you're going to find out how to do all this. NORML really does a great job of walking you through it. Tell me your top 1 or 2 states in terms of their medical cannabis programs that you would emulate if you were in charge of, signing all the bills and writing them.
Well, I don't.
Which you kind of are, but.
I mean, we did take a look at other states when we were first putting this program together. We were given a very limited number to sort of base the program on. Our program is actually based on Connecticut's original model. And I'm not certain that any state in the country has the perfect formula for medical or for even adult use.
Right.
Some are doing it better than others, clearly. And I think it depends on what your personal interests in a program are as to whether or not you think one is great or one isn't meeting your needs. And so Virginia's program is very focused on patient care. Patients will actually see a pharmacist. It won't be someone who might know a lot about cannabis, but maybe not a lot about healthcare that's helping them choose their product. It's a combination of both is required for this position. So it's very much a healthcare approach here. It's certainly been overly restrictive for a number of years now. We're trying desperately to move away from that. And I think next year we'll kind of hit that sweet spot with having more products available and moving towards more facilities. But, there are over 36 U.S. states and territories regulating cannabis right now. And there's certainly a lot of things to learn and choose from.
Sure. And it's constantly in flux because, look at California. They've had legal for 20 plus years and they're still updating the regulations constantly. And that's a good thing. It doesn't happen overnight, right? In one foul swoop. And
we're never done. We will continue to work this program, hopefully every year.
You mentioned Keith Strupp. We've had him on the show here. Great guest. And one of the things he said is, one of the questions we ask him and many people do is, what happens if it's legal nationally? Are you done? And he says, I wish, but no, there will always be new things to do, new regulations to write. We're huge fans of the Last Prisoner Project. We push that really hard on the show. That's a step that we're going to be working on for a while. So finally, just with regard to Virginia, the great Commonwealth, do you have a prediction for adult use, when it might happen?
I can tell you,
I know that's a big...
I can assure you there will be a valiant effort made in 2021 to pass comprehensive legislation to legalize and regulate responsible adult use. I'm not certain at this point.
That didn't answer my question, Jenn Michelle.
If we can be successful in 2021, that doesn't mean we aren't going to try and that there aren't members of the legislature who also want to try as much as we do. So it's a little too early to tell today, but it's coming and it's coming very quickly. It's either 2021 or 2022.
Good. That's encouraging. Yeah. Well, you're the person with your finger on the pulse, so you're the one I figured would be the one to ask. That's terrific. Really, so you feel pretty positive that it's not as far off as some would have thought even 2 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely not. You can see the swift traction that we were able to gain this year, and it really is helpful when the governor of the state is prioritizing your priorities. That makes things go a lot faster.
Absolutely.
It's helpful when you have supportive members in the legislature. We've had that for years, but without an administration and a majority that together are also interested in your priorities, it can be very, very difficult. And so that's something for us to always keep in mind. And for those who are interested in exercising their right to vote in order to influence how cannabis policy moves, if you aren't voting for candidates that support the measures that you prioritize, then you're not doing yourself any favors. Not to say that folks should be single issue voters, but this is a single issue show, and so here we are.
Exactly. Thank you for pointing that out. Jenn Michelle Pedini, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and explain this to us, because the whole Virginia legalization thing has been a little confusing to me and others, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come explain it from the front lines. What can people do to help? If they want to get involved in their state, whether it's Virginia or elsewhere, I personally recommend NORML. Just go to the site, NORML.org. You can't go wrong. You can find places to go. What is your recommendation? Well,
my recommendation as the development director of NORML is to, like you said, go to NORML.org, sign up to get our emails, join NORML, join your local chapter as well. If you're in Virginia, that's Virginia NORML. You can get there at vanorml.org. But join the national organization, join the affiliate that's closest to you. sign up for emails and get involved. And there's a lot of work to be done. So if you have time and energy to volunteer, that's great. If you don't and you have a few dollars to lend to the cause, that's equally important. Nothing really happens for free anymore, and it takes time and money and willing people to get this work done.
Fantastic. Thank you. Is there anything you would like to leave us with? A way for people to maybe get in touch with you? I recommend your Facebook page because you do great live, Facebook Live updates periodically. What do you do it every Friday, I think?
We're doing them every Friday at 4 on Virginia NORML on Facebook now. So definitely tune in and check that out. We answer questions in real time. If you have questions, you can message those to us on Facebook. You can send us an email at info@virginianormal.org. And if you want to get involved with your chapter of NORML, then go ahead and send a quick email to chapters@normal.org.
Jenn Michelle, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time and keep up the great work.
Thanks so much for having me, Jay.